Kia ora, everybody. I really want to talk to you about why I love Aotearoa so much and the opportunities that we have here. But before I do that, let me introduce you to someone I sometimes get a little embarrassed about. A 7-year-old me who loved to imagine and think about so many new possibilities. In that photo, I was trying to be an alien. On a different day, I wanted to be a builder or a karate kid, and so many different ideas. And we're all, as kids, blessed with this opportunity and ability to imagine. We're born with it. We think about new possibilities, things that do not exist. But the reality that I was born into in Ethiopia was very different from all the things that I imagined. It was the time of famine and revolution, things that put our country on the map as one of the worst places to be in the world. I remember growing up, all my parents lost everything to the famine. We didn't have money. We lived in one room. And when the Civil War was happening, many of us kids would sleep on the floor because if bullets got shot through the window, that wouldn't be affected. At that point, survival was success. We're just trying to make it in life. And so my imagination and the reality that I was born into were in the opposite ends of the spectrum. But I was blessed with an amazing mother. Do we have mothers in the room today? Please raise your hand. Put your hands together for all the mothers in the room. We are mothers so much. We wouldn't be here without our mothers. And my mom was so special because she said, no, I want my son to imagine beyond what is possible. I want him to be a solution to the problems that we have. And so she liked to dress me up and take me to places where we couldn't afford, but wanted me to see what alternative possibilities were available. She'd take me to some really nice hotels where kids were playing and swimming and having as much ice cream as they could get because their parents could afford that. And then we look over the veranda and we see shanty towns and slums and walk down there and see kids with bloated bellies because of malnutrition. And kids who are not swimming in beautiful rivers and in beautiful pools, but are actually swimming in dirt and drinking that water and not having a future in their lives. And to her, it was very much about raising a child to bring solutions to a lot of the problems that she saw. And she wanted to invest in my education to get global exposure and to really understand what are the possibilities that we have as humanity. But when she was doing that, our extended family and neighbors all went crazy. They were like, some of them said, why would you do that? Why do you think your son is so special? Why can't he grow like everyone else? And some other people say, why are you setting him up for failure? Because you show him around, you take him to these schools, but he's going to come back. He's going to be just like everyone else. And this voice of reality that was always opposing what we're always imagining. But service was a big part of my family's mission. My parents were missionaries, so we moved around different parts of the world with service. To my parents, success was service. That was the theme within which I grew. And so this is a photo of 3 AIDS orphans that I worked with when I lived in Kenya. And I played soccer with them every week. We went to swim together and learn English and teach maths and serve and really see the value of really connecting with what it really means to be successful, which is about serving others. And service is action. And so I was very curious to really understand what are all the different problems that we have in the world and how are they connected? How are the climate crises connecting with poverty and connecting with a lot of wars that we're having and inequality? And that quest, that desire to really understand the interconnectedness got me to get a scholarship to a place like Harvard and study at Cambridge and eventually land in Silicon Valley. I was very ambitious and very driven. I wanted to be at the heart of action. where things were happening, where decisions were being made, when the rules of society or the rules of our economies were being written. And I gotta say, it felt really good to rub shoulders with CEOs and ex-presidents and people who have so much influence on our world today. But then I realized that I was part of a culture where success trumped service. That was our biggest blind spot, where in places like Harvard, we're very motivated to be on top of the world, to influence, to lead, to be really successful, just to be the best of the best, to be in the lead circles. Or in places like Silicon Valley, where we're really motivated to build the next coolest gadget, to build the next billion-dollar company. Or today, people are talking about the next trillion-dollar company. But we missed the reality that success is about serving. Success is about creating solutions that matter to humanity. And as I was reflecting on all of that and feeling a little misplaced where I was, something else happened. That the degree that I got at Harvard and the work that I was doing didn't match on the government database. And therefore, I couldn't get a visa to stay in the US. And that realization of, thinking that I was really at the heart where people led so much of our society, and still we were not immune to the broken systems of the infrastructures that we helped create. And that was a big moment for me to realize that we need to build new models. We need to experiment. We need to really imagine new possibilities. I don't know how many of you have heard of Buckminster Fuller. Here's my favorite quote. He said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." That the type of imagination we need in society today is one that not just think of a business that does things better, but rewrites the rules of business. What our political system requires of us today is not just for us to go and vote once every 3 years or once every 4 years. It's to think about how our political systems are serving what they were intended to do. We're not just here to build a little bit more sustainable food systems or grow food in ways that do less harm to our environment. We need to rethink our entire food industry. The imagination that our time requires of us is beyond what we've imagined so far before. But we find sometimes that such imagination isn't always working with the realities that we have in our hands. There are voices that say, "Oh, that is not practical. Oh, that is impossible. Oh, there's no precedent for that. No one has done that before," right? How many of us have heard that before? It's always happening, and we're always fighting that reality of today to make our biggest imaginations happen. And I find myself in that place where we imagine, but then we're stuck. But the biggest bridge that I've found between imagination and the reality that we want to create is to experiment. We can't just sit down and imagine, or we can't just give up and accept the existing reality because it's not good enough. We gotta experiment, we gotta get our hands dirty, we gotta try, we gotta build new ideas and new models, but then get from 0 to 1. And so after I couldn't get a visa in the US, I took a step back, pulled a world map, and asked myself, where in the world can I create the biggest impact through experimentation? By imagining new possibilities, but making it happen in a way that it could show a new model. And I came across Aotearoa, New Zealand, and Aotearoa welcomed me with very open arms. And I came here because I see and I found a spirit of service, a spirit of imagination, a spirit of experimentation, and a spirit of action on this land. Our history shows us that we were the first to allow women the right to vote. At that time, guess how many people thought that was too impractical or impossible. This is unheard of, right? There's no precedent. But New Zealand set a new precedent. Now, it's not to say we don't have sexism. At the moment, we do have sexism in this country. But that was a first step of turning imagination into action. A few decades back, many people of this land stood up and said, we're going to build a society that says no to nuclear weapons, and actually made it happen. New Zealand is one of the first countries to give nature, a river, and now multiple rivers, personhood status, to be treated like human beings are treated. That blew many people's mind. Like, how is that? That's absurd. Or that's, some people will call it that's too hippie. Or some people would call it that's too crazy. Now, if you think that's crazy, imagine what it'd be like to have a river vote in an election. To have a river represented on a board of a company. Right? It sounds too crazy, right? But it is possible. We just need to imagine an experiment. Not too far away from here, there was a humble beekeeper who said, I want to reach to the top of the world. I want to climb the tallest mountain in the world. And I assume many people around him said, oh, don't get over yourself. Just stick with beekeeping. If you want to climb something, go to Mount Cook. That's it. That'll be enough for you. Just stay here. Leave it to the Brits. Leave it to others to do that. But he said, no. I'm going to climb Mount Cook, but I'm going to climb Mount Everest too. Ended up doing it. And not too far away from here, a company, LanzaTech, built a technology to turn waste gases into the cleanest biofuel that can fly airplanes. Imagine when that was happening, how many people would have said, oh, there's fossil fuels, there's so much fossil fuel for a lifetime, why would you do that? It's so much human energy and effort, just do what everyone else is doing. But they didn't. And very recently, even New Zealand launched a rocket, which was something that was only available to big countries. And so this vision of New Zealand being an incubation nation for global impact, where we can experiment with bold ideas and bold visions and turn them into reality, where this could be a model for the rest of the world to follow. That vision reached one of the most bureaucratic, slow-moving, and risk-averse institutions, the government. And they said, this sounds interesting. How can we experiment on this? Even the most risk-averse institution, one of the most risk-averse institutions in the country, raised their hand and said, what does it look like to create an immigration policy specifically to enable something like this? And New Zealand went away and created what's now the Global Impact Visa, which is the first visa policy in the world that is saying, if you want to change the world, we want you. There's no other country that has said, that's created an immigration policy around impact, and is making a statement that we are here to create solutions. We're not just here to fill up positions. We're not just here to do what everyone has done before. And the Edmund Hillary Fellowship is implementing that program where we're bringing together the best of humankind's of entrepreneurial potential to tackle global challenges from our shores here, to experiment and to imagine. Our program is about bringing a small group of entrepreneurs and investors, 100 from around the world and 20 from around Aotearoa, every year for a 3-year fellowship, where we can really experiment, push our boundaries of our imaginations, and create lifelong communities of learning, of trying new things. Our values are embedded in our kaitiakitanga, on being bold, on humility, on being really authentic, being true to ourselves, but executing with excellence and creating global impact and creating solutions in areas that are interconnected with other areas as well, not just focusing in our own little silos. So let's imagine, my friends, let us experiment. Let us build a better New Zealand and a better world, because the rivers are not going to clean up themselves. Child poverty is not going to disappear on its own. Mental health is not going to solve by itself. A lot of the solutions that we've tried so far, The iterative approaches of just taking things and just trying to get them better, they're not working. We need to really imagine, we need to expand our horizons. But then once we imagine, we need to experiment, we need to get our hands dirty. And that's really the mission we're all on. And I invite you to be part of this movement, and because you're here tonight, you are part of that movement itself. Thank you very much.